Okay, good evening, everybody. Tonight's Wednesday night, which means halacha and Tanya. Tonight's class is sponsored by Mrs. Sarah Carmelli for the schus of Chayrochel Bas Shoshana Esther, for all good things. So all good things should happen. Okay, last week there was no class, but 2 weeks ago we were discussing the concept in halacha in the kitchen of what's called kavush k'mavoshel, which means if something is soaked for 24 hours, it's considered as if it cooked. Okay? That's only though if it's not something which is sharp. Something that's called in Hebrew davar charif, something which is sharp. Then we didn't get to it last week, just began 2 weeks ago. We began explaining that davar charif, something which is sharp, and I'll explain what that means in a minute. It could take between 18 minutes or, according to certain opinions, 10 minutes. In other words, it normally takes to soak 24 hours to be considered cooking. When it's something sharp, such as vinegar, we're discussing vinegar, salt, very strong spices, something very salty, onions, lemons, garlics, things that are very sharp. Then if you, or very salty water, then after 18 minutes, according to certain opinions, 10 minutes, that is considered cooked already. It becomes actually cooked. And last week we ended up by explaining that's why on Pesach you have to be careful when you want to soak your motard, your romaine lettuce to get rid of the bugs. You can't soak it for more than 18 minutes in salt water, because then it becomes cooked motard, and cooked motard is not allowed to be used for the Seder. Okay, so therefore, bottom line is that if you soak something sharp, let's say you take a sharp, something very salty, okay, and you soak it in a very salty piece of meat, okay, or a lemon, and then you soak it in a meat pot, it's going to be a problem. Well, dairy pot is going to be a problem, because you have to consider it as if you cooked it, even though it was cold. Normally, the problem would be if it was hot and you cooked it, and then you cook something meat in a milk pot, and milk in a meat pot, you have a problem. But if something very salty, that's dairy, and you soak it in a meat pot, after 18 minutes, that pot is going to become treif, the food is going to become treif, and there's a lot of problems with it. Okay, now let's move on to something which we discussed, I believe, very briefly, but it is a very, very practical thing in the kitchen. There's a din that we know that when you cook meat in a brand new pot, the taste of the meat, we learned, goes into the pot, which makes the pot meat. If you're going to later go and cook milk in that pot within 24 hours, so the meat taste that's absorbed within the pot is going to come out into the dairy, and then the dairy is going to become treif, and the pot's going to become treif, because the dairy goes into the pot, the meat of the pot goes into the dairy, and everything's going to be treif. Okay, that's what we learned. What happens if somebody cooked something pareve in a meat pot? They had a meat pot that's clean. Obviously, if it's full of meat, it's meat. You have a clean meat pot, and somebody cooked vegetables in that pot. They cook vegetables and pareve vegetables in the pot. Now, the vegetables, what status do they have? In other words, can I eat those vegetables together with milk? Remember, I cooked in a clean meat pot. I cooked pareve vegetables. And now I want to eat the vegetables with cheese. Or to give a more practical example, somebody cooked macaroni, Pareve macaroni, in a meat pot, in a clean meat pot. Now I want to put cheese on the macaroni, Am I allowed to do it or not? So there are many different concepts over here. According to many opinions, even if the pot was used that day for meat, the vegetables are pareve, and therefore you could put cheese in it. The macaroni is pareve, you could put cheese into the macaroni. There's a famous Rashi's opinion. Rashi says no. If it was within 24 hours, you cooked the macaroni in the meat pot, you cannot eat the macaroni with cheese because it was cooked within 24 hours of the meat. What is the concept of the argument over here? It's called, in yeshiva language, halacha language, it's called not bar not. What does that mean? That's an acronym. Noisein tam, giving a taste, the offshoot of a giving taste. Meaning, let's analyze, based on what we learned, let's analyze what the story is over here. You had a meat pot, which is meat because taste of meat was absorbed within the walls of the pot. That's what makes it a meat pot. So taste one is the meat into the pot. Now comes out the second taste of meat into the macaroni. Now it's all kosher. There was no milk that the taste of the meat came out into. Everything's fine. The taste of the meat went into the pot. The pot is kosher. It's meat, but it's kosher. Now the taste of the meat goes into the macaroni. It's all kosher. It's all good. So therefore, many opinions hold that this macaroni is a doubled taste of meat into the pot, into the macaroni. It's a double taste, so to speak. You're allowed to eat the macaroni with cheese. Rashi is strict, and Rashi holds, no, there's still a taste of meat coming out into the macaroni. Therefore, you can't eat the macaroni directly with cheese. It doesn't make you inflation because there's no real taste of meat in it. This is, I'm saying, even if the pot was used that day within 24 hours for meat, there's still a fresh taste of meat. So many opinions say you can even eat the macaroni with cheese because the pot's clean and it's only a double taste. Rashi holds you shouldn't. And therefore the halacha is, the poskim right, we are machmir like Rashi, and we do not eat that macaroni directly with cheese. You can eat it right before cheese, you can eat it right after cheese, but you don't eat it together with cheese. That means you cannot put cheese into the macaroni. You want to eat the macaroni and afterwards eat cheese, not together, that's fine. You want to eat cheese before the macaroni and then eat the macaroni, that's fine. If you eat the macaroni, it's not going to make it 24 hours. You don't have to wait 6 hours. You don't have to wait 6 hours because it's not really fleshik. Okay? But the halacha is, this is the way the poskim rule. Now, God forbid, I mean, b'diavad, if something happened, if somebody did by mistake mix cheese into the macaroni, it's not treif. But lechatchila, you do not put cheese onto this macaroni. Okay? What happened if the pot was not used for 24 hours? So the meat pot, even the taste of the meat in the pot is blemished, and you didn't use it for 24 hours. Then the din is you can eat it together with cheese. You can eat it together with cheese. Why? Because it's not barnat, no saint tam, bar nice and tam, giving taste, an offshoot of a giving taste, and it's blemished. So therefore, according to all opinions, you'd be allowed to eat that macaroni together with cheese. Okay? That is the concept of the halacha. If it was used for, now, if the pot's not clean and there's dirt, there's meat on the pot, and you cook macaroni in the pot, the macaroni is 6 hours meat. You have to wait 6 hours until you can eat cheese because you have substantial meat in the macaroni. But if the pot is clean and you cook macaroni in a meat pot, you're allowed to, after 24 hours, you can eat it together with meat. Halacha said it's preferred not to lechatchila use such a pot to cook macaroni if you want to put cheese in it. But if somebody cooked macaroni in a pot, fleshing pot, that wasn't used for 24 hours, you're allowed to put cheese on it. The same thing would be in reverse. Somebody made an egg, okay, in a dairy frying pan. That was clean, but it's dairy. And they make Pareve eggs, and the pot wasn't used for 24 hours. Now they have an omelet. And they want to put some people put salami in it. So if the pot wasn't used for 24 hours, so then you would be allowed to put salami into the egg. It could be any food. It doesn't.
Out of the pot, right?
What?
Out of the pot.
When it's out of the pot, obviously, because you can't put, when you have a egg cooking in a milk pot, you can't, and it's hot, you can't put salami in there because then everything will be trained. It's hot. But here we're talking, you made the egg in a milk frying pan, and now you took it out of the pan and you want to put cheese on it, you're allowed to put cheese on it. I mean, the salami on it. The same thing, if you cook macaroni in a meat pot that wasn't used for 24 hours, you obviously can't put cheese on the macaroni while it's hot still in the pot, because then you're going to make everything trade. But if you take the macaroni out of the pot and you put it on a separate plate, you can put cheese into it. Okay? That is the concept. And now let's speak practical dinim that come from this that happen very often. Somebody asked me this tonight in show. A kid came home from camp. He just asked me after Ma'ariv, right after Ma'ariv, he had a question like this. His kid was in camp. He came home. He forgot that the microwave is meat. And he put in a dairy sandwich into the microwave. Okay. So let's discuss this din, so to speak, based on what we learned just now. If the microwave is dirty, there's nothing what to talk about. It's all trafe. You have a dairy sandwich. Yeah, it was an aluminum foil. But still, you have a dairy sandwich in a meat or meat, whatever, either one, the opposite gender, so to speak. It's going to make a trafe. What happens, though, let's take a scenario. You have a clean microwave. And by mistake, and the microwave is meat. It's a meat microwave. And by mistake, somebody put in a pizza to heat up, a dairy pizza. So now, is that pizza kosher? So that already we discussed before, but I want to bring out a different point. Somebody took something Pareve, heated it up in a meat microwave. Okay, let's use the example we were using the whole time. Somebody takes macaroni, heats it up in a meat microwave.
Where was it cooked?
It was cooked in a Pareve pot, no problem with that. Now they take macaroni and they heated it up in a meat microwave. I'm going to tell you the question and we'll discuss the halacha based on details. But let me tell you, so to speak, the question with the way it's asked. Somebody took Pareve macaroni, heated it up in a meat microwave oven. Can I put cheese? Or can I eat that macaroni with milk? Can I eat it with cheese? What's the story? So what is the Rav, in order to answer the question, what does he need to know? Facts. Is the microwave clean? If the microwave is dirty with meat all over the place, that macaroni cannot be eaten with anything but meat. That's it. You definitely can't eat it with cheese because it's dirty. And the dirt makes it fleishik. Now, if the microwave is clean, it was clean. The next question the Rav needs to ask, was it used within the last 24 hours for meat? If it was used for meat within the last 24 hours, then the din is you cannot eat the macaroni with cheese, the way we hold. You can eat it before cheese, you can eat it after cheese, you cannot put cheese onto this macaroni. If the microwave, toaster oven, by the way, the same thing. Microwave or toaster oven wasn't used for 24 hours and it's clean, then you would be allowed to put cheese into this macaroni when it's outside of the oven, obviously. You take it out, put it on a plate, on a paper plate, let's say, and you're allowed to add cheese to it. Let's discuss another very practical question. Somebody Friday is baking for Shabbos. Okay? So they bake chicken in the oven. Okay, I'm going to tell you a practical shaila that comes up. I'm going to tell you the way they ask the questions and the details that the Rav needs to know. When I say it wasn't used for 24 hours, I said it wasn't used for meat for 24 hours. Or it couldn't have been used for heat within any time of 24 hours when meat was used. Okay, so now let's, a shaila, somebody calls a rabbi with a shaila, the following. I baked chicken in the oven today. Now I want to bake a cake in the oven. Am I allowed to eat that cake with my milchik or coffee Shabbos morning? Very practical shaila. Or a different shaila. I made my chicken that day in the oven, and afterwards I baked challah. Can I spread cheese onto that challah? Because it was baked in a meat oven. Okay? So let's discuss the various different scenarios, which obviously is going to change the halacha. If the oven is dirty, that challah is fleishik, that cake is fleishik, you can't do anything with it. It's fleishik, that's it. There's even a question, can I eat the challah with my fish? Because if the challah is meat, from substantial meat, then I can't eat it with my fish either. Okay? So if the oven is clean, there's nothing dirty. If the oven's dirty, there's nothing what to talk about. The cake is fleishik, the challah is fleishik, there's nothing you can do with it. If the oven was clean. Okay? So question, okay, was the oven clean? They say, yes, it was clean. So the next question you need to know, was the oven used within 24 hours for meat? If the oven was used within 24 hours, you bake that day chicken, then you cannot eat it directly with milk. You can eat it before milk, after milk, but you can't have that cake with coffee if you're drinking it together with the milk. Okay? So if it wasn't used for 24 hours and the oven's clean, yeah, you could put cream cheese on the challah. You can have the cake with your, milchik, whatever, coffee or whatever you want. That's not an issue. But there's another issue that has to be taken into consideration. And Rav needs to ask that question. When you bake the challah, when you bake the chicken that day, was the chicken covered or uncovered? Was the chicken covered or was the chicken uncovered? If the chicken was covered tightly, then it's not really spreading fleischiks into the oven because it's tightly covered. Then it's not the thing, that's not the way to go. But the bottom line is, then you would be allowed to eat that cake with coffee and milk. You would be allowed to take the challah and smear cream cheese on the challah, providing it was tightly sealed. But if it's not tightly sealed, meaning it wasn't covered and it wasn't properly covered, so again, if the oven was used within 24 hours, you cannot eat the challah with cream cheese. You cannot eat the cake with your milk or coffee. Or if it wasn't used for 24 hours, then you would be allowed. By the way, this is getting off topic a little bit, but this happened just 2 weeks ago, so I wasn't here last week. Somebody asked me a shaila, and this happens more often than it should, by the way. People are busy out of Shabbos, they don't think. They put in the oven at the same time a pan of chicken and a pan of fish. And they're cooking in the baking in the oven at the same time. It's not relevant to this din of nat panat, but it's a very practical, similar scenario. People bake fish and chicken in the oven at the same time. So the din is like this. If they're both tightly covered, for sure it's not a problem. Because then the fish is not going into the meat is not going into the fish. If one of them is tightly covered, either one of the two is tightly covered, then you could be lenient, especially out of Shabbos when it's late. You could be lenient that but they're both good. Because one of them's covered, so that taste is not going into the other. But if somebody baked meat and fish at the same time, uncovered in the oven, they are both treif, and you can't use either of them. You don't have to kosher the pots, because meat and fish, you don't kosher pots. But you cannot eat the fish because there's meat taste in it, and you cannot eat the fish because and you can't eat the meat because there's a fish taste in it. And these are very common things that happen way far too often, and people have problems because they call you right before Shabbos, and they realize this is what I did, and then what are you supposed to do? They can't eat it. They're gonna have to figure out something else to do. So people have to be very, very careful.
It's straight from the give it to a guy.
If meat and fish you can give to a guy.
Mhm.
Meat and milk is forbidden to benefit from. So therefore you can't give it to a guy because that's benefit. But meat and fish is not forbidden to benefit from. It's dangerous to eat. So therefore we cannot eat it, but you can give it to a non-Jewish person as a gift. But people have to be very careful. And therefore, going back to what we spoke in these dinim a long, long time ago, you need, where it's clean, it's kosher. Because you have much, much less problems if the oven is clean and the counters are clean and the grates are clean, and things are clean, it's a tremendous help. Many times people will take a dairy pot by mistake and put it on a meat grate, a meat burner, on a meat burner. And they cooked it. And afterwards they realized, it was a pot of meat on a dairy and a milk burner. So what do you do? So if the grate was clean and the bottom of the pot was clean, then you don't have a problem. But if the grate is full of meat and now it's dirty, but it's dirty, but it's still meat. And now you're going to be putting a dairy pot on it with dairy in it, you're going to have a problem. It's going to be a very big halachic problem. So again, people have to, when they do things in the kitchen, you need to think before you do it and to know what you can do. I'll give you another example. I just give you a shot because we're very strict in Chol Yisrael, so we don't eat anything that's called DE. We used to have OUDE, OKDE. They stopped it already, but DE means dairy equipment. Okay, you'll find a lot of ice creams that have an OU hechsher, but it'll be OUDE. What does it mean, DE? DE means it was made on dairy equipment. It's made on dairy equipment. It's Pareve, but it's made on dairy equipment. Okay? So now the question is, so if you keep Chol Yisrael, then you can't eat it. Because we don't eat things that are made on dairy equipment. That's not Chol Yisrael. But let's say you don't keep Chol Yisrael. Okay? And you eat regular OUD. The question is now, that food that was made on the dairy and Pareve food that was made on dairy equipment, when was that dairy equipment used last for dairy? If it was used that day within 24 hours for dairy, then you can't eat that ice cream mamish with the milk. I mean, you could eat it before with the ice cream with the meat. You can eat it before, you can eat it after. I'm saying if you have a scenario that you have something that's Pareve made in dairy equipment, then sometimes you can't eat it directly with meat, because if it was used within 24 hours for dairy, so then the custom is, like we said, we paskin like Rashi, that you can't eat it together with meat. You can eat it before, but after, but you can't eat it together. Okay, we're going to leave it here, and we're going to continue to Tanya. And once again, tonight's class is sponsored by Mrs. Sarah Carmeli for the schus of Chayarochu Bas Shoshana Esther for all good.